Hey, what's up guys? I'm Scott from MuscularStrength.com. Today we're going to talk about something that I've never discussed before on my channel. My buddy Ricky is competing in powerlifting and he came across this article over the weekend and he sent it to me. It's by the Irish Post. I'll post the link down below if you guys check it out. But the title is Transgender Women Banned from Competing as Women by USA Powerlifting. So basically you have biologically born males transitioning into a female and then competing, and the problem is that it's starting to become unfair to the biologically born females because these transgender females have a competitive advantage over them, and we'll get into that in a second. Before we do, I don't want anything I say in this video to come across the wrong way. I don't want people to take anything I'm saying, bad or good, and twist my words around. So if you're gonna watch this video and you're gonna participate in the comment section below, just do me the courtesy of actually watching the entire video before you make your opinions, because that's what, adults do, right? My background on this, for those of you who don't know me and you're just coming here because you saw the title, I have lived with a transgender roommate.
So you're either my roommate or you're like the coolest stranger ever.
I'm your roommate.
Okay.
For 3 months. I was on a TV show called The Real World. Up until that time, I didn't even know it was possible to have a sex change operation. I thought my roommates were pulling my leg and telling me that the girl who I know as Caitlin, my friend Caitlin at the time, this person I just met.
Hey, what do you do?
I was actually worked at a gym since I was 14.
Oh, that's pretty neat.
But now I'm getting more into like the modeling and the acting.
Oh, that's pretty cool. I did martial arts from the time I was yay big, so one of my dreams is always to own a dojo. So
that's really cool.
Super cool. Really into sports and superheroes and anime and all the stuff that I was into. We were hitting it off real well. Became close friends pretty quick. Then all of a sudden my roommates are telling me that she was a transgender female, and I'm like, what is that? Like, I had no idea of any of this stuff. And to make a long story short, I learned all about the transgender community. A big part of our season of Real World was talking about equality within the LGBT community. We worked a lot with the LGBT Center on 12th Street in New York City. And then towards the end of the season, my roommate, Caitlin, was gonna have to leave the show because she couldn't afford to be there anymore. You don't make a lot of money on a reality show.
Well, here's the thing, Caitlin. If $1,500 is the only thing standing in your way to stay out here, I'll give you the $1,500. You're here to voice and tell your story. So I'm saying now, if you need it and you're suffering, just ask. I don't mind.
Ow.
And I ended up giving her some of my own money, which I didn't have a lot of at the time. I mean, I was just starting my career, but I felt that her message was very important and that she needed to bring awareness to what it meant to be transgender. And I wanted her to stay on the show and continue to work with the LGBT community, or the LGBT Center in New York City. And if you guys saw the season, that was it. You guys can check it out. I'm not trying to paint myself to be the saint, but I just want you guys to know that I'm not just looking at this from a straight white male's perspective. I've been within the community, I've talked to a lot of people, I've heard a lot of stories, and for me, being a transgender woman, there's a lot to unpack there psychologically, which I think is going to play into the discussion and the determination of, being a biologically born male, being able to compete as a female. And what I mean by that is people who transition from one gender to the other, they don't want to be known as a transgender male or a transgender female. If a male is transitions to a female, they don't want to be known as a trans woman their entire life. They want to be known as a woman. That's why they're doing it. That's why they're going through, the surgery. That's why they're taking all the medications to lower their hormones. Like, they want to be known as a woman. And that's the psychological side of it. But when you start bringing that into sports, that's where you get all this gray area, and that's why people, I feel, are avoiding the subject because nobody wants to be labeled as being hateful or unequal. But I feel like when it comes to topics like this, we tend to only look at it from one side because, especially in America, with Caitlyn Jenner coming out and hearing her story, there's a lot of support for the LGBT community, which I think is great, but we can't live our lives now only seeing things from that point of view and putting all our support over here. We need to have an equal playing field. And so I want to read to you guys some of the stuff that I've been finding and some of these other athletes that are being talked about. So this one athlete, this article is actually a little old. This one's about a year old. So this is a power lifter from New Zealand, I believe. So this is, born in New Zealand in 1978. Laurel Hubbard was known as Gavin until her early 30s. So here you have a biologically born male that lived as a male until 30s and then started transitioning into a woman and then started powerlifting and then started lifting a lot more weight than his competitors. And this is also a person that when competing as a male didn't do so well. Wasn't getting any recognition, wasn't really placing top 50, top 100, but then transitions to a female and all of a sudden is starting to place. And up until recently, a lot of people were saying that there was no evidence supporting that there was a huge advantage for males transitioning as female and then competing as females, and they were basically saying that, well, they were on hormone suppressors, so the testosterone levels aren't as high. But you can see here, on average, men outperform women in weightlifting and other strength events by as much as 25%, courtesy of bigger lungs, stronger bones, and greater muscle mass. The athletic advantage, I mean, it's not hard to see, and we know this. We know that men are usually bigger and stronger than women. And if you're living the majority of your life as a man, that means you've already taken advantage of all that muscle and strength building potential. And then when you start transitioning and you might be taking hormone suppressors. What's the difference between somebody who's taking steroids and then gets off of steroids to compete naturally? You already did all the drugs to get yourself to this level. Even if you lower back down to compete at a natural level, you've still unlocked all this potential that normally wouldn't be there. And so I feel like if you're biologically born a male and then you transition to a female after you've already pretty much unlocked your male potential, you might be on hormone suppressors, but like I said, you've already built up all that muscle mass, your bones are bigger, like there's a lot more things coming into play here than just your testosterone level. Another article that came out, this actually was recent, this was May 28th of this year, and it says, no one is telling you an athlete who ran NCAA track as a man for 3 years just won an NCAA women's title. And I'm going to read right from this to you guys. Over Memorial Day weekend, everyone who cares about the future of women's sport saw their worst fears become a reality. Transgender woman Cece Tefler, who was born and raised as Craig Tefler and competed on the Franklin Pierce University men's track and field team during her first 3 years of college, won the women's 400-meter hurdles national title at the 2019 NCAA Division II Outdoor Track and Field Championships. Tefler dominated the competition, winning in 53.53 seconds as second place was way back in 59.21. And now this is the most important paragraph right here. Prior to joining the women's team this season, Tefler was a mediocre D2 athlete who never came close to making it to nationals in the men's category. In 2016 and 2017, Tefler ranked 200th and 390th, respectively, among D2 men in the 400 hurdles. Then it says Tefler didn't run outdoor track in 2018 as either a man or woman. Now she's the national champion in the event simply because she switched her gender. And then it says Tefler's coach told us that even though she competed on the men's team her first 3 years, her gender fluidity was present from her freshman year. So I guess what he's basically saying there is that they could tell that she was, going to transition at some point. I think that's what that means. I don't want to have words taken out of my mouth there, but that's what I'm pretty sure that's what that means. But what's the overall messaging here? We have athletes that are competing as men and then transitioning to a woman, and as they compete as men, they're not doing so well. Then they transition to a woman, and then now they're dominating. what does this do to, what kind of psychological effects does this have on biologically born women who want to compete in these sports? Imagine, you know, you're 12, 13, 14 years old, you're really starting to get into sports, you find one you really like, and then you go, oh, well, I'm gonna see, you know, what my competition is like, what the world record's like, what, you know, what the local record is like. And then you find out that this record is held by somebody who was born a man and basically crushed the current record that was held by a biological female. And then psychologically, maybe you start to think, what's the point in competing? I'll never be able to get to this point because the person holding that point wasn't born female. They have this huge advantage over me, bigger bones, bigger lungs, more muscle mass. How can I ever compete with that? And guys, we're talking about the average female to average male. Obviously, there are people who are super strong, super ripped, super fast, male and female. We're talking about the average person here. And so, you know, this is something that's going to probably start popping up a lot more, especially now that it's been banned by USA Powerlifting, and that's a pretty big deal. And I want to know what you guys think about it. I mean, do you think that it's fair? Do you think that it's a form of inequality if we ban transgender females from competing as females in powerlifting? So what are my final thoughts on this? Well, guys, I think that we need to open up a few more categories. Why can't we have a category for men transitioning into a woman and then for women that have transitioned into a man? Right now, I have yet to find an article where a female has transitioned into a male and dominated that sport. You know, some people might say that we're discriminating against transgender women by opening up a second category and basically saying this group of women are transgender women. They might say that that's bad or that's negative or that's casting negative shadow over transgender women. If you look at it from the other point of view, if you were to open up a category for females who have transitioned into males, maybe those people would start to feel like that they can compete. Maybe they want to compete, but they don't because they don't have a competitive advantage. If anything, they have a competitive disadvantage because they're not as big as biologically born men. It's just not going to be the same. So at the end of the day, we're not being fair to the biologically born females because they're getting dominated. The evidence is clear. It's right here. It's happening. There's news stories about it. And we're not being fair to the men who have transitioned from a woman because they probably feel like they can't compete because what's the point, right? So like I said, this is a subject that needs to be discussed. There's a lot more to it than just how big and strong you are and how much testosterone you have. There's a whole psychological aspect to this that needs to be discussed, but it needs to be discussed by adults that can see things from both sides. So I want to know what you guys think. Definitely hit that like button because this was not an easy video to make or talk about because it's a very touchy subject, but I don't want to be afraid to talk about things like this on my channel because it does relate to fitness. And if you're watching this video and you are transgender, I want you to feel comfortable to come here. And I want you to feel like you can express yourself and ask questions and give your opinion. I would love to know from you, like, what do you think should happen? Do you think that it's unfair to have a separate category? Do you think having a separate category makes it more fair? Do you think having a separate category singles you out to be like some sort of outcast? I don't think so. I would hope not, but these are things that need to be discussed. So, hope you guys enjoyed today's topic, and as always, more good stuff coming soon. See you guys.